So here's the question. Why do musicians, especially the ones recording from home, so obsessed with talking about warmth? So nowadays, analog gear is getting more rare and digital plugins are getting more precise, but we're still obsessed with getting that warm sound. Through tubes, tape, transformers, guitar pedals, and very expensive plugins. So what does warmth actually mean? I mean, we hear it tossed around all the time, but what does it actually mean? It usually refers to sound that has rolled off or softened high frequencies, a boosted low mid presence, subtle distortion from harmonic saturation. That all adds up to a sound that usually sounds fuller, less harsh, and more musical. Imperfect in the best way. So back in the analog days, warmth wasn't something people chased, it just was a thing that happened. Tape machines compressed transients, rounded the highs, and added harmonic distortion. Tube amps and preamps added their own flavor of saturation and smoothing, especially in that mid-range. They colored the sound in a way that's not technically accurate, but it sounded good. And that right there became the sound that everyone is trying to recreate now. So I always think of tube amps when I think of warm, so here's the oversimplified explanation of them. So apparently you've got a cathode heating up and releasing electrons, which shoot across a vacuum and get shaped by a grid before hitting an anode. That electron flow is your signal path. They compress peaks, round out sharp transients, and generate even order harmonics. So what does that mean? It means that the tube amps aren't going to handle that audio in a flat line. They're going to compress the peaks, round out the sharp transients, and generate even order harmonics, extra frequencies that blend nicely with the note that you're playing. So that's what gives tube amps their warm sound. It's not just the slight distortion, it's the type of distortion. Then digital came in, and yeah, it fixed a lot of things. It was cleaner, flatter, more reliable, but it also felt super hollow and empty. Early digital converters did not have any of that natural smoothing or harmonic content. They were too clean, so instead of feeling real, they felt sterile. It's like watching one of those robots that walk around at events that are like for tech experiments. It's like watching them just interact like a human. It's technically right, but it's just weird. I don't know. I don't like it. Now we try to fake it. There are plugins for tape, tube emulations, saturation chains, basically software that pretends to be bad in the right ways. Like personally, I'll throw a tape plugin on guitar or drum tracks just to kind of get some of that warm feeling back. Not because it's a super bad track or anything, I just feel like with a tape plugin, it kind of glues it together a little more with that little bit of saturation that you get in there. So personally, I use Arturia's Mello-Fi. It does a solid job of warming things up without sounding super gimmicky, but that's just me. And honestly, that's what really got me into analog pedals. I started out using digital stuff, multi-effects units, clean DI tone, software chains, but after a while, it started sounding a little too clean, like almost too predictable. I know it sounds weird, but stay with me on this. So I'm actually getting into building my own analog pedals. There's a subreddit called DIY Pedals, I think, and eventually I'll be able to get the parts in. I have a soldering iron and everything, and I'll probably make a video on it. I've also been on Facebook Marketplace a lot more than I should be. So I'll check every few days just in case some random person is selling some beat up tube preamp or some weird gear that they don't know the value of. And if it's underpriced, I'm still probably gonna low ball them a little bit. I mean, come on, you're on Facebook Marketplace. You know the drill. I work at a grocery store. What do you want from me? So analog warmth does cost money, but if you know what you're looking for, you can get a pretty good deal. So there is a real reason this sound has been sticking around. So research in psychoacoustics, awesome name by the way, shows that subtle harmonic distortion, especially in even order harmonics, can make a sound feel closer, smoother, and even more emotional. It adds texture, it creates depth. Your brain hears it as real even though it's technically flawed. So obviously, tons of modern music uses this on purpose. Tame Impala's Lonerism wasn't just recorded on vintage gear. A lot of it was done on a Little Boss 8-track digital recorder. So Kevin Parker, the soul, the entirety of Tame Impala, ran everything through pedals, compressors, and saturation until it sounded like it came from another era. Even stuff like Billie Eilish's Ocean Eyes uses warmth. So probably not vintage gear, but smart layering and saturation that makes it feel analog. Here's the catch. Warmth can't save a track. I've tried. Trust me on this. If you go overboard, you get mud. Too much saturation can choke the clarity right out of the mix. And then suddenly the warmth feels like a blanket over your speakers. So usually the best tracks don't sound warm across the board, they sound warm where it counts. Also worth saying, Lo-fi and warmth are not exactly the same thing. So lo-fi is more degrading the sound intentionally, bit crushing, tape warble, vinyl crackle. It's about imperfectionist style. Warmth is a little more surgical. It's smoothing the harshness, not blowing it up. It's kind of like seasoning a dish. Lo-fi is kind of just dump the whole jar of chili powder on there, and warmth is kind of just sprinkling the salt on. If you're working in a DAW, here are some go-to sounds for warmth. Tape plugins like Mello-Fi or Softtube Tape, tube amp sims like anything from UAD or Waves, saturation units like Soundtoys Decapitator or FabFilter Saturn, analog style compressors like the LA2A or 1176 emulations. So you definitely don't need all of those. Those are just some options that I've heard are really, really good. I only use that Mello-Fi, but that's kind of the key. You don't want just a ton. You kind of just want to use that as the salt. So every genre uses warmth differently. Psychedelic rock adds haze and texture. Hip hop gives drums and samples grit. Jazz softens transients, brings out the tone. Electronic music adds character to clean synths. So it's definitely not a one size fits all thing. Warmth should match the vibe, not override it. So here's the funny part. We're now using pristine digital systems to emulate the analog flaws that we used to try to fix. And we're paying good money for it. Because even though we can record audio in that perfect detail, our ears still want that edge. That imperfection makes it feel alive. It's not exactly logical, but it works. That's all I've got on this one. If any of that made something click or you have a favorite plugin, drop it in the comments. And yeah, if you want to sub, cool. If not, that's also cool. I'll see you in the next one.